Treatment. The log roll. It is essential that you have the medical equipment required to do the job. Ensure that you know how it is used and use it correctly. Prepare the equipment before the game and check that it is all working correctly. Ensure that you have the following items ready. Trauma board. This is a wooden board made from marine ply with holes for handles where straps may be inserted around the sides of the board. It has 2 rails on the underside of the board to provide extra strength as well as space when applying the spider harness. If there is no trauma board, you could use a door, although this is far from ideal. It is important to check the board and rails on the underside for cracks, as this could weaken the board and it could break when a player is being carried, causing major injuries. A cervical collar. The cervical collar is a plastic pre-formed collar with a Velcro strap on either side. It sometimes is stored flat. In order to assemble it, bend the tab with the black corrugated peg on it towards the hole next to the Velcro patch on the collar. Push the corrugated peg through the hole and ensure it is firmly in place. The collar is designed to be applied to the neck with minimal movement. When correctly in place, the cervical collar will assist in keeping the player's head in a neutral position. It does not provide complete spinal support. Ensure that the cervical collar to be used is not too big or it could be ineffective. The head blocks. The head blocks are a soft set of blocks with straps on a base plate designed to maintain the player's head in position. This is only effective when used in conjunction with a spider harness. The base plate is to be attached to the top of the trauma board when preparing for the match. This is a circle at the top of the trauma board. Slip the Velcro strap through this hole to prevent the head blocks from sliding down the board. Firmly tighten the Velcro straps of the base plate around the underside of the trauma board and back onto the Velcro on top of the base plate. Ensure that the base plate is properly secured and cannot move. The tags with buckles on the side of the base plate are for the head straps to be secured and do not form part of securing the base plate to the trauma board. When applying the blocks, ensure that the straight side is closest to the player's head. The spider harness. The spider harness is designed to be applied to the player to secure them to the trauma board and prevent any movement of the spinal column. It is only effective when used in conjunction with correctly applied head blocks. When applying the spider harness, slip the straps through the holes on the board and fasten the Velcro onto itself. Ensure that the V at the top of the spider harness is clear of the cervical collar. Once fully applied, the harness should be evenly spaced and neat. Any loose straps must be tucked away. Another vital function of the spider harness is to enable the medics to turn the player onto their side without compromising any spinal injury if the player vomits. Once you suspect that there is a spinal cord injury, the injured player needs to be prevented from any form of movement whatsoever. The referee or coach is to be prevented from encouraging any movement of the injured player without the injured player being fully immobilized. With this procedure, your medical support team looking after the player has to work as a complete unit. The leader of the team is to take control and secure the injured player's head in a neutral position by lying on the ground and begin to issue calm, firm and clear instructions to the medical team to carry out. Irrespective of what type of spinal injury has been sustained, we treat them all the same way. The player needs to have a cervical collar applied and be fully immobilized on a trauma board with head blocks and a spider harness to secure him in place and prevent any movement. Immediately take a firm hold of the player's head and secure it in the neutral position to prevent any potential further damage to the spine or spinal cord. Ask the referee to stop the game immediately. Call your colleagues onto the field, bringing all the equipment with them. Brief the player about the procedure and what he is about to undergo. Reassure him constantly. It is good practice to ask regular questions to interact with the player, as this helps you monitor his level of consciousness, as well as ensuring his airway is open and adequate. The medic at the head will be in control of the entire process whilst maintaining inline cervical spine stabilization. until the appropriate devices are attached to the player. Cervical collar. The cervical collar is designed to assist in keeping the player's head in a neutral position. It is a good indicator to anyone involved in the player's treatment that there is a high suspicion of spinal injury, and care must be taken not to move the player's neck. Even with a collar in place, it is important not to let the player get bumped or moved inappropriately. Prepare the collar to be applied, make sure the clips are firmly in place and that it is the right size for the player. If the cervical collar is too big for the player, if it extends above the player's jawbone, does not support the player's neck, it is advisable not to use the collar. Make sure you have the collar the right way up. Carefully slide the collar's Velcro strap under the nape of the player's neck and pull it through until the back of the collar is underneath the neck. Gently roll the collar around the neck, positioning the chin into the chin holder and the side flares in position under the jawbone. Pull the Velcro strap up and fasten it into position, ensuring that the collar is not too tight or too loose. Continue to maintain manual inline cervical spine stabilization by keeping your hands in place on the player's head. Continually monitor the player's breathing and level of consciousness throughout. Log roll. In order to place the trauma board under the player, we need to roll the player onto their side. Position the trauma board behind them and then roll them back onto the trauma board. Obviously, this needs to be an extremely careful procedure, which must be well drilled, well planned, and perfectly executed. Good communication from the person in charge and full cooperation from all the medics will prevent mistakes being made. The medic at the head is in charge. He keeps his hands in position on the player's head at all times. Position 2 medics on one side of the player and one on the other side with the trauma board. Ensure that the base plate of the head blocks is in place on the board prior to positioning the player on the board. The 2 medics kneel on the ground with their knees slightly away from the side of the player, ensuring that they are stable and comfortable. They position the player's arm nearest them across his chest. The 2 medics place their hands on the injured player's side furthest away from them and take a firm hold on his body. Do not grasp his arm or clothing, interlocking their arms. This will ensure that they move the player as a unit at the same time. A final brief by the medic at the head and acknowledgement from each medic, then we can begin the procedure. The medic at the player's head counts to 3. On 3, the medics on the side pull the player towards them in a single, slow, controlled manner. As they move the player, the medic at the head moves the player's head in sync with the movement of the rest of his body, maintaining the head in a neutral position at all times. When they reach the top, they stop and hold the player in position without moving him. The medic with the trauma board slides the board into position, pushing it as close to the player's body as possible without pushing on him, making sure that the board isn't too high or too low. Once the trauma board is in position, the medic at the head counts to 3 again. On 3, the medics on the side slowly roll the player back onto the board in the same controlled manner as before, until the player is lying flat on his back on the board on the ground. The player is never in the center of the board and always needs to be moved across to be in the correct position. To move him into the center of the board, the 2 medics move their arms to the same side of the player's body, still interlocked, and prepare to push the player away from them. The medic at the head counts to 3 and on 3 the 2 medics push slowly and carefully. The medic at the head moves the player's head in sync with the rest of the body, ensuring no relative movement of the spine. When in the center of the board, the medic at the head shouts, "Stop," and everyone stops moving the player. The player's legs are positioned in the center of the board with his feet together. Recheck the player's airway, breathing, and level of consciousness again. The head blocks. When the player's head is in the center of the base plate, the medic at the head continues to support the player's head whilst another medic places the head blocks in place on either side of the player's head. He must ensure that the straight, upright side is closest to the player's head and that the player's ears are in line with the holes on the head blocks. Once the head blocks are in position, the head straps need to be attached, ensuring that the soft sponge is firmly in place. The chin strap must be positioned firmly across the head without blocking the player's mouth and not putting any pressure on the top chin section of the cervical collar. Recheck the player's airway, breathing, and level of consciousness again. spider harness. Securing the spider harness will complete the process and prevent the pendulum effect from being a risk. It will firmly secure the player to the trauma board, enabling the medics to safely carry him off the field of play and transport him to hospital. One of the major benefits of having the player strapped up so tightly is the ability to turn the player lateral to protect their airway. If the player vomits whilst immobilized, it is relatively easy to turn the player onto their side and clear the airway of any vomit without compromising the damaged spine. To put the spider harness in place, lay it out onto the player. Ensure that the V straps of the harness are closest to the player's head and that the Velcro is facing upwards. Lay out all the straps and spread them evenly along the length of the player's body. Attach the head straps first, ensuring that the V is positioned just below the player's neck at the top of his chest. Each head strap should travel along the side of the head block without exerting any pressure on the head block. Attach the foot straps to the lower end of the trauma board, ensuring the player's feet are together. Tighten the spider harness from the foot straps. Apply the side straps to the trauma board, keeping the player's arms outside of the straps. Wait until the opposite straps are in position before tightening them. Once they're in position, tighten opposing straps simultaneously, slowly and firmly. Check with the player that they are not too tight or causing him any pain and discomfort. Once all of the straps are firmly in place, tuck all loose ends under the straps to prevent them from flapping around. If a loose strap is on the floor, a medic could stand on it, and when the player is lifted, the medic could drop the board, causing all sorts of problems for the player. Recheck the player's airway, breathing, and level of consciousness again.
Blanket. Where possible, place a blanket over the player. This will prevent him from getting extremely cold. Lifting and carrying. When lifting the trauma board, position 2 people on either side of the board. Ensure that you have a firm grasp on the handles. Brief the player that he is about to be lifted. When the lead medic calls, everyone must lift the trauma board a few inches from the ground. Pause for a moment to ensure that the board is taking the weight of the player properly. Keep your back upright when lifting and lift with your knees and legs, not your back. When walking off the rugby field, always walk forwards and do not rush. A medic could trip and this could be a disaster. If the injured player vomits, the team need to turn the trauma board with the injured player secured on it onto its side and ensure that the vomit is cleared out using a finger sweep and ensure that no vomit remains in the injured player's airway. If the weight is too much for a medic, they must tell the team and the player must be put down carefully. The medics all swap sides to give their arms a break. When the player is put down on the side of the field, ensure that the sun is not in his eyes. Recheck his airway and breathing again, as well as his level of consciousness. Always explain that the neck injury is a suspected injury, where all necessary precautions are being taken in the event that the injury is confirmed. But more often than not, these are just precautionary measures to ensure that if there is an injury, the injury is controlled and does not get aggravated by any movement.